Well, it's following on from what Phil's talking about. I don't know if any of you have looked up Professor Don Huber. You don't have to listen to either Phil or anybody else, but just look up that name and look into his pedigree. He worked for Monsanto, or within Purdue University, a lot of research with Monsanto, so he knows a lot about what it does and what we're not supposed to know. And that man's now been ridiculed by the establishment. But I did some further digging. He's an eminent plant physiologist. He's one of the co-editors of a major textbook called Marsh and His Minerals and Higher Plants. And there he is there as an editor of a significant section. So that's one name you can look up. There's YouTube videos of him being interviewed. He's exposing the truth of what he learnt behind the ill effects that have been ignored, or we can mask them with something off the shelf. There's a question I put to all the farmers and the horticulturists in particular. There's a symptom that pervades Hawke's Bay, but pervades most of the horticultural fraternity, but certainly pervades Hawke's Bay. It's a mineral deficiency. Anybody like to tell me what that is?
Magnesium.
Looks like magnesium.
Sounds like magnesium.
Similar. Manganese. Huber will attest to this. 1964 was when glyphosate was registered in the USA, and it was registered as a chelator, and the most powerful thing that it could do was chelate manganese, and it could take manganese out of the plant system to the point that it killed it. So that's effectively what all herbicides do, is they all block a certain key function in a plant, and most of the time it's manganese, because that's sort of king of the trace minerals, if you like. We've got king major minerals like calcium and manganese, and what we have here in our district everywhere, until it gets interrupted and some remediation takes place, is manganese, often confused with magnesium, but it's always evident in the young part of the growth, not the older leaves. So there's a distinction, and that's what Bruce was on about when we were first here. Magnesium deficiency everywhere. Yeah, there was some magnesium, but there was manganese lead right from the beginning of the season. And no amount of putting manganese or anything else on before changing the system made any difference to that, because it was so powerfully chelated until what just been discussed has happened here. So we've got a glyphosate disease, if you like, in our orchards. So it's just a very visual evidence of what it does. It's a very, very good herbicide. The other aspect, just in terms of plant evolution, Phil was looking at here at the mallow, and mallow sort of adjusts to it, but in the evolution of plants, mallow is very, very primitive. And what we're doing when we're herbiciding with any herbicide, it's just not, is we're knocking the soil back in its evolution, making it more primitive. So the more we knock it back, the more primitive weeds we have that come back to recolonise, and it boils right down. Something you can grow nothing but moss and algae, and some people then start asking, well, how can I kill that? And, and I've literally had that question, and we stopped doing business about a decade ago. More primitive. We liberate a lot more nitrate when we've got a herbicide strip, and what comes back to gobble up that nitrate is stinging nettles, nightshade, fat hens, and so forth. So they're all giving us indicators. So again, once we've stopped interrupting, those nasty weeds have disappeared. That's just something we can add to it. So these are all indicators. There was a question before, I must say, because I've got somebody asked Nicole, was she concerned about herbiciding practices and things, and I have to say I am. One of the most things that concerns me is stock grazing herbicided pastures that are going into crop when DNA is affected by parts per million disruption, parts per billion, and hormonal function in plant systems and animal and human systems is affected by parts per trillion. So I just have to ask the question.
I just would reiterate that, Steve. It's a very worrying trend that's arrived over the last few years with one of the things that glyphosate did when we got it as a tool was it allowed us to speed up what we could do. We could get into a crop in 7-10 days. But we've also got impatient at the other end too. We get tall green crops we want to make out of silage. We can't make them out of into silage until we dry them down a bit. So we whip some glyphosate on, kill them, and they dry down quite quickly, and then you can make them into silage. It's not good for ruminant nutrition to have glyphosate in your feed. Sorry to horrify you like that.
Well, it's going to get worse. Just a reminder that a couple of things happen with glyphosate in the soil. It's a phosphate chelator. When it's through in that season, we've been operating under the impression that it disappears. That's not actually the case. It's just that it goes into the clay colloid in the soil and it disappears in such a fashion that by most normal soil tests, you can't tell it's there. You don't get a reading for it. So therefore, people assume it's gone. It's not. What brings glyphosate from the soil colloid back into function in the soil is another application of phosphate. Okay, so every time you add phosphate to a soil, you'll be bringing that Roundup out of soil lockup and into activity in the plant. So what we're seeing is part of the reason for the decreased mineral content in our soil, so less nutrient density in our soil, meaning less nutrient density in what we eat, and the whole host of human health problems that go along with us not having the trace elements we need for our enzyme function and our hormone function could well be related to Roundup. The other thing I want to say is when you think of why are we having all these extra viruses and diseases, it's been shown that if you have an impoverished organism nutritionally, where you have an undernourished mouse, for example, a virus will come into that mouse and it will become more virulent. It will become stronger if the mouse is undernourished. There's some really serious implications of that for not only our animals, but for ourselves as well. Plus, Roundup has now been proven to be cause birth defects, liver and kidney damage, and hormonal disruption. So not a good look. Remember, you can always just take a little longer and do what we did before 1964. Disc a couple times.
Or the pragmatic approach that's used more commonly by biological growers is to chelate the chelator and try and protect the environment.
Can you explain
chelator? Yeah, the glyphosate molecule is harmful. We've talked about that, but we do have farming systems that rely on getting out of pasture and into a crop in a reasonably short time, and we can reduce the amount of glyphosate we need to introduce by getting it into the plant more efficiently, and we use a product called fulvic acid to do that. So we chelate the glyphosate molecule, get it into the plant tissue more easily. We also have a trick. Glyphosate's more active at a low pH, water pH of around 3.5. You can get it into the plant more effectively. So if you put some citric acid in your tank and drop the pH of your spray tank, you don't need so much glyphosate. Put some fulvic acid in, chelate it, get it into the plant. What happens when the glyphosate molecule hits the soil? It's got a feed for the microbiology there, the fulvic acid, and it can be broken down, we hope.
1.5 litres per hectare of bioag soil and seed, and we still get a better kill than what we did at 5 litres, and we're sort of paying for some of those sins of using the product, because you can't do this to every block in New Zealand. You know, if you've got stones or you've got this or you've got that. So and even with those regimes, that's where we saw our greatest leaps forward, was just introducing that. And it's because the cost is about the same, so there's no cost difference. It's just a train of thought difference.